Olá, alegria de estar aqui com você e de compartilhar um vídeo muito interessante. É uma conversa muito importante que foi realizada este ano durante o 12º Congresso Mundial da Sociedade Teosófica, realizado em Vancouver, no Canadá. O presidente internacional da Sociedade Teosófica ADIAR, o Sr. Tim Boyd, conversou com membros destacados de outras instituições teosóficas, numa verdadeira polinização cruzada, que é o lema principal do ITC, Conferências Teosóficas Internacionais. Esse encontro foi em comemoração aos 150 anos da fundação do moderno movimento teosófico. A tradução e as legendas em português foram feitas pelo nosso irmão Jairo Cavalcante. Vamos assistir?
All right, so this particular program we had envisioned a while ago. As you know, this is the 150th year of the Theosophical Society's founding. More than that, though, it's the 150th year of the Theosophical movement's founding. Theosophy has spread far and wide, and even within the groups that identify as Theosophy, it is one source that we all come from. So the idea was to get some of the proponents and the active people from some of these different streams together for a conversation. In an ideal world, it was envisioned as something where we would be talking and you would be the privileged listeners. It's not about that part of it. But we have some very prominent people here. I'm going to ask when the program ends, or right before, if everyone could turn their phones on and make them ring. And then pay everybody. We have meetings for the art project, for everything. So turn those phones on at the end, have them ring, and get your euros. And we will actually take 100 in Canadian dollars. But we have a distinguished group of people here. April, and in fact, I have known all of the people here now for some years, and we've done different things in different places. Didn't start off knowing everyone here, but with the work of the ITC, don't tell me, International Theosophical Conferences, all of them have been active in that at various different points. Jonathan, I think, was its president at one point, as was Jean. So each one has their own background that has brought them to this whole theosophical movement and to the different aspects of it that were attractive to them. And so that's something that I really wanted to try and get into just to start with. I could give some introductions, but just in very brief, April here, master's degree in social work, PhD in public administration. She's actual member of the Theosophical Society, ADIAR, but has started their own group, which is Alexandria West. Remarkable archives, 11,000 books, remarkable work that she's been doing across movements. Jonathan came and spoke at the Theosophical Society's International Convention in ADIAR. He is a member of the ULT. I say member, but then I actually want to talk more about the idea of associate, so maybe you guys can help me with that a little. But he spoke at our convention there. For the longest time, we have had this recognition that it is one body of theosophists attempting to understand and communicate theosophy. We find ourselves in different places doing it, but that's no reason why we shouldn't find ourselves in the same place doing it as well. So Jonathan has contributed to that. Ken Small was born into Theosophical family and has functioned within the Point Loma aspect of the Theosophical movement, but has broadened, and he is a Theosophist wherever he finds himself. Gene Jennings, Dr. Gene Jennings.
That's enough.
Dr. Zell. I never called him doctor. Now we're up here and it's like Dr. Gene.
Time. It's good.
Anyway, Gene spoke at the Theosophical Society's convention. Actually, it was he and, our friend, Herman Vermeulen. We invited them to speak at the convention, and they were graciously came. While Herman was speaking, he made a comment that I hadn't even thought of. And it was that this was the first time that a leader from an alternative theosophical movement had ever spoken at the Theosophical Society's convention. I mean, in a sense, it's obvious, but it was not to me. So, I mean, that's the way that we proceeded, and hopefully, as we're here, it's something where we're here to have our conversation. So just as a basic sort of introduction, just each one of you, why are you here? And what is it about the place where you landed and the place where you now grow and serve in your aspects of theosophy that put you there? How about you, Ray?
Hi, everyone. So I met my husband, Jerry, in Lake Geneva Convention in 1980 of the Theosophical Society. And he's a very special person. He started studying theosophy at 16, and he knew all the traditions, and he's our library of 11,000 books, including archives and unique archives and magazines that are priceless. So Jerry introduced me to theosophy, and he introduced me to, since he's an old hippie from LA, kind of beatnik hippie, hipster guy, he introduced me to all the traditions. And he was president of LA Lodge when I met him, and we together decided this was our life, is to make theosophy available to people. And we believe that each person has to discover their own spiritual path. And so therefore, to do that, they need lots of options. And since the first object of the Theosophical Society is to form a brotherhood, it seemed really important for all these different theosophical groups that grew out of HPB as the source, and then the basic split that happened between William Quan Judge and Annie Besant and Alcott, that all those other branches went crazy. Okay, I'll hurry.
No. Microphone.
Oh.
Don't hurry.
So it seems to me, since the first object is brotherhood, that networking together in a brotherly fashion to support one another in terms of groups is really very important, because we're practicing the first object. So for us, networking became a top priority in our career. And I do want to say that Jerry did a networking conference in the early 1980s in Ojai. They organized it, we organized it together. And he had the heads of different theosophical groups meet there, and who hadn't talked to each other in 20 years. So Jerry really, I have to give him credit for sparking this whole idea of let's network together. So real quick, I was on the ITC board for about 6 years, and we tried, really hard to make connections with one another and to have conferences that would support each other's traditions and at the same time spread theosophy. So I think it's a very viable, important goal to keep trying to do this out of our devotion to brotherhood and our devotion to give people options for their spiritual growth. So I'll stop at that. Let people keep going.
How about you, John?
So, I was born, like my brother Ken here, in a theosophical tradition in the ULT in Los Angeles. And it's been kind of I guess my whole trajectory through this has been through 3 different ULTs, but also expanding in concentric circles around, out, to connect with other Theosophists around the world. So that's why I came here, just to be with you all. But I was born and raised in the LA ULT, and at the time, I'm not saying that now, at the time it was pretty limiting, and it was getting smaller and so forth. And I became very intrigued with the Santa Barbara ULT. Okay, and the thing that was amazing about that was that it seemed like it was being led by people who actually had wisdom, Raghavan and Nandini Iyer. And and the community, and so I've actually seen an incredibly thriving Theosophical community before. So that was very interesting to me. And then, I guess now, I'm down in San Diego. So it's just like this kind of movement through different spheres, you could say. And I see incredible potential there in San Diego. And one of the things that was amazing about the ULT experience in LA was April. Because what happened was they saw that they're losing all the young people. So they did something to seduce me into staying a little longer. And they said, we need you to chair a class. And I was 20. And it's going to be in Isis Unveiled. And I says, well, that's interesting, but I don't know anything. And the lady that was that got me going on that, she was wise enough to say, doesn't matter, all these other people, they don't know anything either. So with that confidence, but the reason I mentioned April and her husband Jerry is that they had the magnanimity and the wisdom to reach outside of their Theosophical Society setup and come to the ULT and to put up with all of its limitations. Right. But no, but I saw the opportunity at 20 years old. There was like 18 people in the class. And I did the math on that. You've got like whatever 18 times 30 or 40 years is of experience. And so I just decided, okay, I'm the disciple. I've got all these people that know way more than me. I'm going to take advantage of this, you know. So, because it's what you call making do with what you got, and it was amazing. What an experience that was. So then I used to have these very challenging conversations with my father, James Colbert, and we would, you know how young people are with their parents. They'll just say any darn thing, you know, and sometimes that are not so friendly. But I was really challenging him on a belief in the Mahatmas. I was saying, Dad, your problem is you don't believe in the Mahatmas. How could you be in Theosophy all your life? You can imagine. And you don't even believe in the Mahatmas. They're the whole basis of the whole thing. And he started thinking, yeah, son, you're right. I've had trouble with that ever since I was a teenager, because he was raised in this stuff too. And he started thinking about it more and more and more, and that's when he really started catching on fire with the ITC, because he was thinking, now if the masters were here today, they would not like this thing that all the different groups are so disconnected. And so he spent the rest of his life thinking about brotherhood in practice with the ITC. That was his deal. So now we have the Aquarian series in San Diego ULT, and it's online. But I really just, in honor of my father, but also in honor of just the spirit of this kind of new regeneration that's going on, is that I invite all kinds of people from different organizations and different parts of the world to speak for the Aquarian series. And it's been a wonderful cross-fertilization. And we've had like Barbara Hebert, for example. And the thing that's amazing about Barbara is that she is equally conversant with Gottfried Peruker, as with Annie Besant, as with Robert Crosby, as with HPB, effortlessly. And to me, that's the epitome of this amazing enterprise.
Hear, hear. Robert.
It's
it's also good, I get to say, okay. So I was born into theosophy. Of course, when you're born into something, you're just born into it. It's just what you're surrounded with. And very wisely, also, my parents never indoctrinated myself or my siblings in theosophy. If you're immersed in it and it's in you, it would naturally come out. So I thought it was quite normal, though, growing up to have international visitors. Boris Dezorkov would come once a year regularly and stay for 3 or 4 days to go over things with my father, Emmett Small. And so discussion of the secret doctrine or Sanskrit language or all the facets of theosophy were quite normal. To have a couple thousand books in the house on world religions and theosophy was also quite normal. So I would just gravitate to things gradually growing up. And in terms of networking, I can think back at age 5 when we had a visitor, one of these many visitors came by, and I can still remember this woman arriving and coming into the house and greeting, and it was Joy Mills. So just a few years ago, I happened to be at Cortona, and Joy was in her last days. And I sought time to talk with her. And I said, Joy, do you remember? Oh yes, I was with da-da-da, and it was 56 or something, and I was like, she remembers better than I do. Anyway, there was a nice connection. So out of that also came later, 20-some years later, when my parents with others started Point Loma Publications and were publishing books from the Point Loma tradition. Then there was more collaboration with some co-publishing and books published by T.P.H. Wheaton also. This is part of the networking aspect. There's so many things to talk about, I don't know. Also in the networking phase, you mentioned Jerry, there's also a network newspaper that was put out by Rick Nuri Stearns, and Eldon Tucker was involved in the 90s. So this actually was very useful. This is pre-internet. So all the different theosophical groups were listed there, and this provided a way for people to interlink and work with others. For myself, I was also actually, I can't remember how this happened. I was only like 21 maybe. I was actually president of the Adyar Lodge in San Diego for 2 years. I didn't know what I was doing then, but it was good, and also, I keep forgetting to renew my membership, but I am also been a member. When you're born into something, you don't think about it.
Doug, you see him after the meeting?
Yes. No, but I think in this, the big picture is the theosophical movement, and the movement manifests in different forms, with or without the word theosophy attached. We have to keep the perspective of the greater movement, whether, it's in the form of different theosophical groups, whether it's in the form of, that I've experienced in First Nation groups, indigenous groups of the Americas, in Sufi groups, in Buddhist groups. You can find what we would call the theosophical thread in that, this universal wisdom religion factor is alive and well and very vibrant in the world. And we have to be alert to it taking other forms and interacting with that to our best of our ability as well.
Thank you.
It works.
He's got the cord. You just hang on to it for now.
Good morning. I really don't know what to say. I wasn't born into theosophy. I didn't know it existed. And I was born in the South Bronx, and we just had a whole different lifestyle. But I must say that for me, and I've shared the story with some, the greatest teacher of my life was always my mother, because she died. And that was when I was 4. And so death has always been a friend, but death has always been the teacher that has made me seek for an answer to all of the chaos. And so we could look at that psychologically or whatever, but you know, that's all crap too. The bottom line is that at that age, I made a promise to myself that before I died, I would know. And it was her sacrifice, if I think of it that way, excuse me, that put me on a path. And I've never had any teachers except for Theosophy, because it was the only thing that answered all of the questions that arose through the experiences that I had from the point of her death up to the point where I found Theosophy 14 years later. And so it's always been, I call it, invisibly riding the surfboard of life. I'm not in control. All of the things that have been valuable have happened, not because I planned them. And so, in a sense, I've been the witness to the unfolding of this theosophical worldview, as you would say. And it's been a beautiful, chaotic path. All of the questions that I have asked of life have been clarified. There, as weird as it sounds, there's nothing left to ask, but I always remember what JFK said, political switch. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And so, from the theosophical worldview, it's ask not what Theosophy can do for me, but what I can do for Theosophy as it exists in this current era in the world. And so it has taken me on that surfboard to meet people like the ones here, like you, so that I can run my mouth and say all kinds of chaotic and crazy things. And perhaps in the midst of that dialogue, something rings true. Because life is life. We literally all do the same things. We all look for the same things, only at different times. It's amazing to me that we get up in the morning, all of us, we eat, we all go to the bathroom, and we have dreams. We go to sleep. Some of us wake up in our sleep. Some of us do different things even when we're awake. And then we die, at least in the body. And yet Theosophy explained all of that. And so that has been my constant partner. I mean, outside of my wife, I don't want to disparage her at all. She keeps me grounded, and my family with all of the responsibilities. But that and the Master's letter, which many have quoted from today, yesterday, day before, is the purpose, at least for me, of my life. You know, the emptier we are of all of the garbage, the less there is to want, as I think it was Elizabeth said so well the other day. And when you just get rid of the garbage, there's only purpose. And so what that purpose has become, because again, I've not had the Joy Mills. I've not had the teachers. But as Tim said the other day, do I believe that the Mahatmas, I won't even say the Masters, the Mahatmas exist? There is no question. There is no question about that. And as HPB said, even if you saw one in the body, how would you know it was still one? Because anybody can be present in the body. And so always in this mind, it's a reference back to the great master's letter that so many have referenced. And what is the goal? The goal is simple. The Shohan said they want a universal brotherhood of humanity, universal solidarity. And because I've been on the other end of that for various reasons, in the States and through the little circles I've had to walk through, even theosophically. You know, it's not always reception. It's not always, oh, hey, come on in, and no, you know, life is life. Crap happens. But despite that, that letter and the promise that they have and will demonstrate the answers to all of the dualities of life, that's an inspiration enough for me. And so when we can get together, I mean, I think one of the things, and I'll end it on this, that you mentioned when we were talking before is, you know, what's that vision?
Yep.
And I've played, you know, with that idea for so long, but it's amazing to me that there are more TS lodges all over the world. There are ULT lodges all over the world. There are Point Loma lodges all over the world. And we're all doing our things, and we're all studying, and we're all having our little individual experiences, and blah, 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 blah. But what would happen if all of us became a center of universal brotherhood for real? And communicated with each other and planned with each other. As Elizabeth said, in the turbulence comes that new vision. This could happen tomorrow. This could happen tomorrow. So when we look at that vision, at least for me, if there was vital centers of universal brotherhood in every lodge in all of the world, this world would be a different place in a very short order of time if we could live that. So, enough.
I think the intention of the founding of the movement was well spoken in what you said. Just to bring it down just a notch, yesterday we were talking, and you know, my membership card says Theosophical Society Adyar. The reason I'm with the Theosophical Society Adyar, like you, I was not born into a theosophical family. Sometimes I find myself in India where you have people coming up to you who are fourth, fifth, even have some sixth generation kids now. I joke sometimes and say sometimes even as president I feel a little inadequate. I can't claim generations of theosophy, so what I do is this. I can tell the truth and I can say that I'm a second generation Theosophist. My mother joined. The reason she joined was because her son had gone off on this crazy tangent. In 1975, when they had the 100th anniversary celebration in New York City, where she lives, she joined so that she could come to that meeting and investigate. So I'm second generation, in reverse. But that's the Theosophical Society Adyar. I'm there because the person who I met, who was a dynamic person, went on to become a teacher for me. That was his affiliation. So I affiliated and found meaning, found depth, found the same studies that we share. We were talking, I think it was yesterday. I think it was in New York. You wanted to get more involved with this theosophical thing, but you know, there was a Theosophical Society Adyar meeting, and there was also one with the ULT. Could you please tell that story? I'd like for the people to know more about your human side.
The story, and really it was the deciding point, I guess, of what took me to ULT. I had been doing my studies and researches and experiences and blah, 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 and I had come across a reference to the secret doctrine, and then serendipitously, or synchronistically, if you wish, the Village Voice was brought to my house by a person who typically didn't visit and left on my table. And I opened up the Village Voice, and I saw for the first time in a newspaper the words Theosophy. And there were 2 theosophical presentations that were in the Village Voice. One was by the TS, and one was by ULT. And I said, wow, 2? Which one am I going to go to? And the TS cost $5.
That decided it.
And ULT was free.
Yeah.
And I remembered that in one of the readings I had come across by H.P. Blavatsky, she said, spiritual knowledge can never be bought or sold. And so I said, well, $5, see you later. And I went to ULT.
So there you have it.
All for $5. Sorry, Mike, I didn't know you then.
But, okay, so that found you planted there. But let's talk ULT for a moment, because Jonathan, you grew up, you were born into the ULT family. What is it that distinguishes ULT, say, from Point Loma or from T.S. Adjar? Or, I mean, what are distinctions? Because I do believe that many people landed where they landed and found that that's good enough for them and really don't have an awareness of any sense of difference. Are there differences? If so, what might they be? Oh, pardon me. United Lodge of Theosophists. Point Loma is the group that began with the division that took place with William Quan Judge and Annie Besant, essentially, and then went on to become, under Catherine Tingley, Point Loma. And there have been other evolutions since then. You want to say something?
Well, yeah, and then out of that, Robert Crosby, basically, who knew Judge, etc., split, and I'm sure you can talk about that. And it's really important to understand all these branches that split after the initial break between when HPV died, just to get it really clear, that Judge had developed the American section, and then Annie Besant and Alcott were in India, and there was a power struggle and basically a big split. And I will say, one of the different things that has come out of the whole branches of the tree are power struggles over leadership. Who is going to be in charge? So I just want to say that the shadow side of Theosophy has always been there. And it's part of the movement. It's part of humanity, is to struggle over what should be the vision. What should be the vision? So each of these leaders had a different vision. And the more you get into the splits, the more you see that was a primary factor. And I think it's important to recognize HPB as the source and not to assume that every leader after that is necessarily saying the same thing as HPB. So this is that's the distinction to make, is what did HPB say? What did Robert Crosby say? What did Rudolf Steiner say? All these different leaders who broke off, they had different emphasis, different way of looking at it. So what's going to appeal to you is what's going to help you to grow spiritually, what you're open to, what really helps you to be a better person, to be more brotherly, to be more integrated as a human being. And that's the path I think that networking helps to develop, is more opportunities for people to discover what works for them in their spiritual growth throughout life. Stop there.
Just to piggyback on that, I think, you know how Theosophists are big on making big pronouncements? Um, here goes. I think that the 150th anniversary of this movement is the time of getting rid of these old issues and actually celebrating the diversity, and to really almost bow down before the wisdom that each one of us possesses in this room. And more than the 100th anniversary ever could have been, even though that was a very inspiring time, 1975, for so many. Some of us came in, to Theosophy at that time. And every Theosophical tradition person that I've spoken to that's alive now during 1975 said that it was an incredible time of energy and impulse, and the world changing and so forth. But this 150th, this humble observation is really a watershed in terms of the groups coming together, and maybe not formally, that's not necessary, but in the heart, just soul to soul. So, so to answer Tim's question, try and be brief. The ULT, I would distinguish it between its ideal and its practice. So ideally, interestingly enough, the ideal DNA of the ULT was incredibly forward-looking, because from what I understand of the ULT, with people like Robert Crosby, B.P. Wadia, is that they wanted to get back to the original teachings of HPB, and they felt that Judge and HPB were really kind of the same, two sides of the same coin. And that one was not a successor of the other, but instead they were just colleagues, they were just co-workers, and that they were the messengers. Not to disparage other teachers and so forth, but why did they want to look backwards? Because you would think that looking backwards is kind of too much inertia, or too much worry about being too pure. That wasn't the idea of it. They wanted to tune into the fidelity of that original vibration so that 1975 would have a home. That was their vision. So it was really a forward-looking setup. And so they wanted to create this kind of impersonal field of devotion. You could almost call it non-dual bhakti, really, to create an environment in which 1975 could come. That was the ideal. And in some ways, it was supposed to be the original ITC, so that they could be an associate instead of a member, right? And so in other words, you could be a member of any and all, just like HPB was setting up Theosophy, that you could still retain your religious point of view, right? You could be a Muslim and a Theosophist, or you could be a Christian and a Theosophist, or a Hindu and a Theosophist at the same time. Just so the ULT was supposed to be that you could be a member of any Theosophical organization and an associate of the ULT at the same time. So, not to get too much into the critique of the ULT, but there was a tendency, there's the human tendency to dogmatism and concretization. And it's my personal feeling that huge building in LA is the ultimate example, which is where I grew up in and where I love that place, but it's the ultimate example of concretization, because it's all made out of concrete, okay? And it was supposed to be, it got this giant auditorium for 1975. so it seats 500 people in this great auditorium. It's majestic. But now it's empty. It's interesting. But so in other words, it was concretizing 1975, when 1975 was really supposed to be about the message of the Mahatmas and so forth. And as Tim has explained, the letter can come in a million different ways, right? Knowing what to do, moving ahead one step at a time, and so forth. So that's, to me, that's the idea of what the ideal of what the ULT was supposed to be, which is, and in other words, there's room in that, in kind of an open textured kind of context that, so it's, you could almost say it was a quasi-esoteric field within the Theosophical movement that's anticipating the cyclic renewal, regeneration of theosophy on this 100-year cycle that HPB talked about in the Key to Theosophy.
Okay.
So
what's the practical? Consider it was an ideal and then a practical. What's the practical?
the practical can only be, I think the gods don't want me to, oh, there we go. For me, the practical of the ULT is being what I do. And that's all the practical is for anybody. What do? I just keep on going on. And I wait till those letters from the Mahatmas every day, okay? Which is not on a piece of paper. But if you do your duty and you try and help others and treat each other as souls and so forth every day, well, then that's your letter from the Mahatmas, it seems like. And then, what also the Aquarian series that, I try and promote, which was based on an almanac that was put together by Raghavan Iyer, who I've come to adore and try and understand his teachings a lot. But that's just me, I can't really tell somebody else what's practical for them, so.
Can I ask Ken, who is from the Point Loma tradition, has also been very deeply involved with the archives and the libraries related to Point Loma. Probably all of us are aware in the recent fires that occurred in Southern California that this enormous resource was completely burned during that. So could you just say a little bit, Ken, about the Point Loma tradition and perhaps something too about the libraries?
So April gave an intro basis for how the Point Loma tradition arose. After the split in the mid-1890s, then William Q. Judge passed away very soon, and then Catherine Tingley became his successor. You could read a few thousand pages if you want to. I'm not suggesting that, no. But, these dynamic forces were at play within the movement, and this is like, I see it as a very organic growth, so then Loma Land literally emerged as if in a few years out of nowhere. It was like something waiting to be born. And Catherine Tingley was a very unusual, many of the Theosophical leaders are unusual, and I think maybe in some ways she was one of the most unusual in her characteristics. She was not at all an intellectual person. She was not someone to sit and study the secret doctrine. But she kept it by her bed. She would look at it. She kept the voice of the science by her bed. She would read that more. She was an inspirational, action kind of person. And her vision from childhood was to embody this city, this global village, this school. She'd seen it from childhood. And the whole story of how it happened was very synchronistic, very almost magical, you know. And suddenly in San Diego, a small town at the time, this global village is emerging at its peak by late teens. 500 people are living there. They're growing all their own fruits and vegetables, their own printing press, books, magazines, Raja Yoga School, Teosophical University. And her vision was to make theosophy intensely practical. Take it into daily life. The whole community would meet in what they built as a classic Greek theater every morning for silent time and some inspirational quotes from world scriptures and the voice of the silence. People worked in the garden every day. The expressive arts, music, drama, literature, was daily. Musical performances, orchestra. It was to create this incredible creative environment based on theosophy, which fully manifests during that period. So this is the first phase of Loma Land, the first foundation, and then also her activity as service. You know, again, Loma Land was seen as a retreat from the world, but as in service to humanity. So then there was outreach on prison reform, anti-capital punishment, anti-vivisection, global peace initiatives. She would fire off telegrams to Woodrow Wilson telling him to stop World War I. You know, they would have peace parades in San Diego, but a peace parade for them were children from the Loma Land School, quotations from world religions, walking through San Diego. Children would write quotes on paper every Sunday, wrapped in calligraphy with a wildflower. It would go to every prisoner in San Diego, for example. She would meet with people on death row to counsel them. She was also a delegate to the incipient League of Nations. This was her kind of activity. Later, you know, after when she died in 1929, then Gita Parukar vision for theosophy based on this basis, you know, became a much deeper study of his view of the teachings from Blavatsky, and especially infused very much with Mahayana Buddhism. He taught Sanskrit to Judith Tyberg. Then, you know, this was in the curriculum at Loma Land. Brief overview. As in all groups, they were continuing when Gita Parukar died in 1942, and Loma Land, due to extreme constraints of finances and World War II issues and all kinds of things, ended up moving to Covina. He died. There were then subsequent issues around successorship, which led to different branches even within the Point Loma tradition, which continues to today, each with its own flavor and work in the world. So those branches include the groups in The Hague with Herman Vermeulen, and then the other group in Pasadena, Altadena with Randall Grubb. So the main inherited library and archive of the Loma Land tradition from the time of Catherine Tingley was held in Pasadena, and in the wildfires that burned in January. So,
Yeah. It was a tremendous loss for the theosophical world. One of the drawbacks of this particular conversation is that it's time constrained. Initially, our hope had been that we'd be able to run for a while. We have this photo coming up. But I would like to get from each of our people who are here and unfortunately it has to be briefly. What we're talking about, please go ahead.
One more minute.
Go ahead.
So this, to continue, that in these different fragments and pieces of the lowland tradition, and also I've inherited from others in that tradition the largest now remaining archive of the lowland tradition. And we hosted exhibits in San Diego, and this continues on. There are great artists from that tradition, all these things. So Professor Santucci published a great book on our archive and things last year, which gives a available overview from the lowland tradition. Yeah.
Can I ask each of you, maybe in a minute or less? I mean, we are Theosophists, we're nothing if not concise. If you could, we're talking about our role in shaping the future. That's part of why we're here. From your particular perspective, and I'm not talking about from your tradition's perspective, unless that's how you choose to think of it. From your perspective, what is it? Where are we going? As a theosophical movement, or as participants within a theosophical movement. You got a mic in your lap there, Gene?
Yeah, I guess I'm just simple. I think all groups are simply vehicles. I think the most important thing is the message. Secret Doctrine, Isis Unveiled, the Mahatma Letters, and the path that leads each one to. And again, in that Mahakan's letter, nirvana, selfish vacation, who needs it? All of the knowledge and the wisdom that they have would not be enough to reward the people that could work truly in an unselfish way for universal brotherhood. All of the knowledge, all of the wisdom, everything that we're thinking, all the questions that we want to answer, screw it. It's not that important. What is important is somehow to shape this world in a way that equity, equality, simplicity, respect, love, and honoring each person's approach. I mean, we've been given the 7 principles. They break down into 49 fires. It shouldn't be too hard to understand that people are different. From 49 different points of view, or 363 different points of view, people are going to be looking at the world. We've got folks here that study science. We've been seeing the beauties of art. We've appreciated the music that's going to be coming tonight. There are those that are here psychologically. One truth shattered through different fragments of a gem. We have to appreciate that. There is no need for arguments. There's no need for disagreements. All of that is a waste of time. And so my vision, or my hope, would be that simple request. Universal brotherhood that embraces all of sentient life. It's that simple. And if we get out of our ways, it should happen, because give thanks to them, because again, their message is clear. You know, and it was mentioned, if we get beyond the imagination of our egos and our personalities. Yes, we suffer in different ways, as April made definitely clear to me yesterday and mentioned in terms of the shadow, but still, if we are working in a universal brotherhood of life, suffering disappears as well, because we're always helping each other. So that would be my vision.
Thank you. How about you, April? And in a minute.
So following Jean's, I think, vision, which I totally am in harmony with, I'll just stress that for me, the spiritual path has to do with what you said the other day, cultivating oneself to be open to the process of what spiritual growth is about from minute to minute. and learning from that experience. There's an old song, inch by inch, row by row, gonna make my garden grow. All I need is a rake and a hoe and a little fertile ground. And as we do that with our lower self and open ourselves to that intuition you talked about, then things appear, as you pointed out. If we can see it, I'm always shocked to see if I'm open enough, the door opens. And there is a synchronicity that points the way for each of us to discover what the path is. And it's just ongoing. And it's wonderful because you don't know. It's great. So I'll just stop.
To me, it's possible to shape the future by creating millions of nuclei throughout the world. Maybe thousands is less ambitious. In other words, many golden ages within the Kali Yuga, within myriad nuclei of universal brotherhood. And whenever one nuclei becomes stronger, it increases the strength of all of the other nuclei. And it doesn't matter, the name of it, it seems. And to me, this will be like an enzyme, if you will, to borrow Jean's word, to regenerate the world.
Within Theosophy too, you think each decade, we look back then, we see all this literature, and it's gotten now huge. Going forward, and this is just within Theosophy, and then the broader Theosophical movement, vast. It's very important to look at how to integrate this going forward, how to truly, and also how to look at areas that some of our personal preferences and biases of history then have occluded certain things. So within that, there are actually hidden jewels in the shadows that will also help us in the future. So these also need to be released so they don't bind us. Like in Tim's talk yesterday, he was talking about history so we don't repeat it. This requires great transparency, concur with everyone's vision of the higher order, but this also requires allowing the space for the hidden, both wonderful and challenging, to come up and be resolved and learn from that going forward as well. Is very important. And in the broader field, I also really, this meeting is, I was also, as Tim was, Michael Gomes, others were at 1975 convention, very inspiring then. Some of the old Theosophists gave these great speeches, great inspiring, part of the last quarter century energies present. This gathering is more significant and more important due to the challenging nature of the times and how the Theosophical movement's role now in the next century and two unfolding is much more significant to maintain this, these nuclei of universal brotherhood going forward.
Well, all right, at this point, time has captured us, as it doesn't let us go, it seems. But I want for all of you, all of us, to be thankful to each person who is here. They're going to be here. If there are things that you really want to hear more about, everybody's going to be here and we can all talk. So thank you, Jean. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, John. And thank you, April.
And thank you, Tim.
And thank you, me.
Porque Porque na vida a gente quer se conhecer. Cá entre